So the book I read for my report was Lean UX: Applying Lean Principles to Improve UX. And what this book is really about is how UX integrates into an agile management process, understanding the teams that go into that process and how to get them to work together to ship products early and often. So constantly creating prototypes, seeing how customers react to those prototypes and to those early products to create really good versions of the final product. So the book gives a really, really great high-level overview to this design process from start to finish. Also really helpful for understanding how to create prototypes, how to get people together for creating those prototypes and early versions of the product. But what it could really emphasize is what happens when things go wrong. So it assumes that a lot of what happens during this process is nothing's going to go wrong. So it should really account for those types of factors, such as what happens when people don't cooperate, what happens when people can't show up to meetings, and how to account for those factors as well. Also thinking about more the design side, so emphasizing that more. This book could add some more value to that as well. So that's an overview of what this book is about. Thank you very much for watching.
In the book Universal Principles of Design, the authors present 125 concepts that deal with design to various degrees. Essentially, the book asks the question, what makes good design and what makes bad design? The concepts run the gamut from purely design-oriented concepts such as the golden ratio and area alignment to less design-oriented, more tangential, more theoretical concepts such as attractiveness bias, baby face bias, or the idea of garbage in, garbage out. I find the book to be really invaluable for anyone interested in design. One thing that I think might be an improvement would simply be if the authors would say how each of these concepts relates to design. Is it tangential or is it just a purely aesthetic concept?
Hooked by Nir Eyal has proven to be very popular among the startup community. The author explores why it is that we use some products as a habit. For instance, why do people use Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram regularly when these are not necessities? He has studied these and various other digital products to figure out how one can embed habit-forming features into a product. The resulting hook model has 4 steps: a trigger that reminds users to use it, an action taken on the product, a variable reward, an investment that leads to another trigger. By going through this cycle multiple times, the user forms a habit. This book provides great insights into the user's psychology while they're using the product. Authors also share discussion questions for teams designing products. I wish, however, that they had addressed the moral dimensions of creating addictive products more fully. It would have helped also if they had compared the successful products with unsuccessful ones to draw contrasts.
This is a video book review of Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug. This book is about offering recommendations for building usable websites. It does this by providing design advice, especially around wayfinding and navigation for websites, conducting usability tests with low costs, and also considers users with disabilities and users who are using mobile devices. Its strengths are its brevity and directness. It's under 200 pages long and presents advice that's really easy to follow, particularly for conducting usability tests. There's even tips on selling manager types on this approach, and I chose to read this book because someone who works for me recommended that I read it. Where it's weak is on coverage of sites where users create and work with their own content and the trend of desktop applications migrating to the web. The content on mobility and accessibility is also not well integrated. But in general, this is a really good book and provides a lot of specific advice that I am very, very likely to go out and take myself.
Greetings, my name is Wesley Ronick and I'll be presenting 100 things every designer needs to know about people. This book covered a lot of human psychology and it broke it down into subcategories. Of the 10 subcategories listed, there weren't 10 things in there though. A lot of the core values here centered around how people process information differently, whether that's mental models, reading, vision, attention, and subconsciously. Be aware of inattention blindness, that was a recurring theme. That's the gorilla video. And we're also all social animals who love unlocking that latest badge on Foursquare. The problems were it got very repetitive, especially towards the end. I repeat, it got repetitive. There was a lot of missing information on latest social trends and how that can impact things, and also take everything with a bit of a grain of salt. Not everybody's lying to your face if they talk to you on the phone.
Designing Interactions by Bill Moggridge. Bill Moggridge is one of the founders of the design firm IDEO and designer of the first laptop computer, the Great Compass. In this book, Designing Interactions, the author interviews over 40 influential designers and discusses their roles in designing interactions. He suggests that digital technology has had an effect on how we interact with everything, and that the role of the designer goes beyond the design of the object and encompasses the design of the interaction itself. The book's very engaging and includes a lot of anecdotal details and pictures of the innovations and the design process. Together, they form a vivid point-in-time snapshot, and then place it in a historical context. A constant theme in each interview is the challenges of breaking the barrier from a technological perspective and then figuring out how the innovation can be used in the user's experience. The book was published in 2007, and it's interesting to note that many of the forward-looking predictions on where things are headed were quite accurate, such as the rise of the cell phone, popularity of interactive games, and a move away from the desktop paradigm of files and folders on a desk. A lot has happened since the book was published in 2007, and it would be interesting to read a sequel covering the ever-evolving role of HCI in the design process and other historical innovations that IDEO has been part of. Though it may be harder to monetize, it would be interesting to see this book in another medium.